And we are here to give you a brief summary of the next batch of code amendments and updates for the department. A couple years ago, we updated the building codes, residential and commercial, and then the fire code and the housing code to the 2012 versions. We're here today to kind of summarize the plumbing code and the mechanical codes for you that we're bringing up to the 2012 versions. And my first slide is just a really brief overview, and I think all of you have been through this. You know about the task forces that are made up of contractor and or primarily contractor and direct stakeholder groups that go over these codes, mechanical codes, made up of mechanical contractors and a mechanical engineer or two. The Code Study Committee then is another citizen group that is the second level and the last level before it gets to your guys' plate, and that's made up of half task force members and then half at-large members. So there's a housewife in there, there's a university professor, and a couple of just business folks throughout the community. So that's the Code Study Committee. These codes have been through both of those stages, and we're just here to give you a summary of some of the changes coming up. And a couple of, like I said, we're here to adopt the 2012 Uniform Plumbing Code. That's will constitute the Lincoln Plumbing Code, and then the 2012 International Mechanical Code, 2012 International Fuel Gas Code, and then we're also, I'll explain this one a little bit too, a new code, which it's not really a new code, is the Uniform, we're adopting 2012 Uniform Mechanical Code, Chapter 12, as the Lincoln Hydronics Code. And a couple of other items of note, I want to talk about the hydronics code.
Could you introduce all your guests?
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I started going quickly here. Sorry. Okay, I'm Chad Blaha. I'm Director of Building and Safety. This is Steve Hartsock. He is the former Chief Mechanical Inspector. He has recently retired, but he was with us for the bulk of this process and agreed to come back and help out with this and answer questions about that process. Got Rex Crawford over here. He's the Chief Plumbing Inspector. And then Mark Howard is the new Chief Mechanical Inspector. So any direct questions you have, feel free to contact or send Mark's way, and he's more than qualified to help out with that. And then we do have Tom Hardesty. He is the chairperson for the Mechanical Task Force here, in case other questions came up about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve forgets.
There you go. There you go. So back to the hydronics code. So hydronics, if you want to know what hydronics are, feel free to ask these guys. They can give that explanation to you. Previously, each code had its own hydronics section and slightly different requirements for those installations and those types of equipment. And so each group of contractors had a slightly different set of rules to play by. And they were both licensed to do the work, but they were just slightly different. So we wanted to unify that and combine that into one code. And the groups chose the Uniform Mechanical Code to pull that in. So it sounds like a lot of business, but it's really the same thing that's been done, that we've been done.
I'll ask Mr. Hartsock, because someone's going to ask us, what is hydronics?
Well, hydronics is the use of water to transfer energy. And so we will actually get energy from the ground through the use of water to transfer into our homes, businesses, and so on.
Okay, very good.
If I could add, there's a little bit more to that. It's also steam,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also chilled water. It's anything to do with heating and cooling, whether it be, on what Steve had explained is a lot more on your residential, although it can be used. Lincoln Public Schools uses a lot of groundwater heat stuff, but there's also chillers and boilers that we use to heat and cool water in order to heat and cool buildings too. So.
Yep. Yeah, so there's that. So we just have a separate location for that. Second item that could be confusing for some of the folks used to working in these codes, we're traditionally, the fee tables have been embedded within the ordinances that have the code requirement, the individual code requirements. Most city departments, in fact, I don't know if anybody else, keeps their fees within their ordinances. So we're pulling them out and adopting them through resolutions, a separate fee table from the requirements. It allows us to look at either of them kind of on an individual basis if they need adjustment. And so the adoption process will not change. There'll still be the task force to look at the requirements. There'll still be approval through those citizen groups, but and also require council approval, but we're just pulling them out and doing them through resolution this time. We worked with Chris Conley with Law Department, and he liked the idea. And so it doesn't change how our customers' business will be done at all. It's just a different method of adopting them. And then the plumbing code, I guess, for anybody who is familiar with it, even though there wasn't a whole lot of substantial changes from a content standpoint, it's being completely rewritten from an organizational standpoint. And so the section numbers do not match at all what was previously adopted. So some of the customers or the contractors who are used to looking in our ordinances may have to look in a couple different locations. So that's the bulk of that.
Mr. Blaha, on that, if I may just interrupt, on that change where they're renumbering,
Yep.
will there be cross-references within the code? I mean, is it a wholesale taking section 1 to section 5, or is it taking section 1 and
That's what
divvying it
happened,
up?
but we've done that for them already. So now, if we reference, for example, as it is right now, in the Lincoln ordinance, it references a section number, let's just say it's section, 305. In the new published code, that would have been moved to like 310. And so there was a disconnect between those, and it was real confusing for me coming in as a when I first started looking at this. So now, all of the references in our ordinance will make a proper reference to the published code, and in the right sequential order. It's much better.
Is there anything in the published code that, say, an individual, a citizen, remember, has been used to going to section 305 and now it's 310, that it would say in formerly 305 or something to help cross-reference for their benefit?
We didn't do an index, so to speak, or something like that. It would have been massive to try and make all of those. We did not do that. We would encourage anybody who does have that confusion to call, and we will help them out. Help them out if they have that confusion. But we did not do this was previously section whatever. It's,
I don't know how hard it would be, but if you do an appendix, it would just say 305C under pre-2017, now see 310, just listing like that. I don't know.
You would be using an old book if you had confusion. So our hope is that people will purchase the new books,
Yeah,
and the old numbers will not mean anything any
they got to be
longer.
working off the new books anyways.
thank
So
you.
our code matches the new published book there. So I think we will eliminate confusion. We will eliminate more confusion than we'll be creating new with this. Does that make sense? Okay.
Just
And our
donate the
index
royalties to
do
the city
cover
council.
the subject,
What's
the
that?
indication of the subject.
Donate the royalties of the book sales to the city council, please.
Yes, there's quite a racket with these publishing or the publishing organizations and their books. I guess with that, that's kind of my opening salvo here, and I'm let Rex cover some of the specific plumbing code changes.
Okay, under the fee changes, start with those right away. The Board of Appeals application, they boosted that. It had been at $250 for quite some time. They boosted it up to $500 for Board of Appeals. And that's mainly to take care of all the background work and stuff that has to be done to get ready for something like that. The next thing is single fixture replacements, such as a replacement for garbage disposal, a dishwasher, a toilet. The plumbing code has for years required a permit for each one of those. Well, what we're proposing now is we're gonna drop that from a $35 permit fee to a $15 permit fee. And what we'll do, just to kind of help us out a little bit, we've got so much construction and so many inspections, is we'll drop back and we will work at getting 25% of them spot checked to go out there. So instead of, and it will make it a little bit easier for people that simply can't get off of work, where they have trouble meeting us for a timed appointment or something. So it won't be quite as difficult for that. And we'll still be able to keep track of the number of permits that's going on out there, and to make sure that the work is done by licensed contractors, because, you know, we do have problems with that from time to time. So, like I said, a $35 permit fee is now gonna become $15 for just one single replacement. You can't do two, because if you do two, then it's gonna fall in a different category. So then the next item that we have under the fees is gonna be the med gas. We haven't ever inspected med gas piping. The medical section had been deleted from the code, but we're leaving that in the code now. And so that means that we're gonna start inspecting, making sure that we have certified personnel doing the work, make sure that they're purging the piping when they're doing the brazing, making sure there's a certified brazier that's doing the work, make sure they're using the proper materials, it's all cleaned and capped. And then at the very end of this job, the plumbing permit can't be finalized until we get the third-party verifier signing off on saying that this outlet has oxygen, this outlet has nitrogen, and so forth. So, and that typically has to be done for any medical care facility anyhow, but this way we will hold any final inspections until that is taken care of. So, like I said, that's kind of a new step. And with that, the fees for that are gonna be $100 for the first 10 openings, and then $10 each for each opening after that, and that's to cover the trips for the inspections. The re-inspection fee that had been set back when they adopted the 09 was $40 or 45. Now I can't remember it, but I'm going to drop that, or I'm proposing to drop that back to $35, which is a trip fee that we have. So anytime, for instance, on a new home construction permit, you get 5 inspections, which means an inspection for the sewer, the groundwork, the rough in, the gas test, and the final. So anytime you have more than that on a residential house, they have to pay a $35 trip fee for the extra trip. So I've dropped the re-inspection fee, so it's exactly the same. It doesn't make any sense to have, you know, you're going back a second time, why shouldn't it be the same? And it'll be a lot simpler record keeping.
So that doesn't matter when you go back for a reinspection. It doesn't matter whether you're reinspecting 2 items or 1. It's still just 35.
It's just, yeah, it's for the trip. It's to pay for the time and the gas and everything else to go out there and look at it a second time.
I think for historical, we had that difference due to encouraging not having those re-inspections, because that just took more paperwork too. So that may have been I think that was the reason for that extra
But
$10.
push come to shove, I don't really think it really made much difference, to tell you the truth.
That's fine.
And that's why, and it makes a lot easier in our computer system tracking stuff. Because that way we could just go and just quick reinspection fee, and it's the same. So that's the proposal on that issue. We clarified on the hydronic piping, as you can see, it's hydronic piping is $10 per 100 feet, heat pump piping 10 per 100, and radiant panel piping is $10 per 1,000. Now the reason for that is your panel piping is like your in-floor heat or your snow melt systems, where there is a lot more piping out there, and so that's why that one you get more footage for the $10. And previously, when it was put into the code, those numbers weren't spelled out, so it was just $10, $10, $10. And so that's why we are clarifying that now currently. And so then I think the final item that I've got here on as far as fees is Public Works and this kind of goes with two different things. Public Works has proposed that because of the sump pumps that we have that are actually illegally discharging into the sewer, whether it's through a floor drain, direct tie into the stack, or whatever, what they want us to do is to be sure that even if a sump pump doesn't need to be installed, that the piping is installed on a new construction house. That way, if the basement's finished, when the house is finished, the piping is installed outside to an outside water course and run over to within 3 foot of the pit. Now, like I said, we're not requiring pumps to be installed, but we want the piping to be there, so if they do need to put in a pump, it's right there and they can tie into it, and there's no need for them to try and put something into a floor drain or something else that's not supposed to be done. So that's the reason for that. That's an $8 line item, and that's just, all of our plumbing fixtures, basically all of our fixtures are $8 per fixture. And so we just put that in as $8 as another fixture, even though the pump's required.
And the sump pump is for all new residential as well as remodels?
Well, no, and I believe, you can correct me on this, on the building code, Chad, they put sump pumps in every house, don't they? Isn't that in the building code?
No, they typically put sumps in. It's in
That's what I
every
mean,
house.
the pits.
But
But to verify that they are
the
functional.
piping is
Right.
part of the plumbing code.
Mhm.
And so this was a measure that was kind of proposed between us and Public Works to ensure that at least the piping was there. Now, the committee decided not to code study committee, this was brought up kind of a long way through the process. And so it was at the code study committee when Donna came and talked to us and we presented this to that group. And it was at that point where they decided not to require the pumps themselves be placed at the time of, the new construction, but to have the discharge piping available there, because to retrofit the discharge pipe after the basements are finished and that sort of thing is, quite a bit more expensive, to do. And this way, at least they'll have that discharge piping there.
Is there any way that we have in place to, when we have to go back out for whatever reason, to a residence that's been there for 25, 30 years, that we can verify their plumbing for their sump pump?
Well, it kind of puts us in a difficult position. I know we can, I have asked my inspectors to take note if they see an illegally discharged sump pump, if it happens to be visible. But we aren't the enforcing authority on that. There's not much we can do. We can inform them that you really aren't supposed to be doing this. And really, when I asked them to take note of that, how many they went over a period of time, and it wasn't a ton that they noticed over.
No, it's not a lot. Like, we maybe see 1 or 2 a month, probably, that we stumble on. And at that time, we do explain it to the homeowner that they're not supposed to be doing it, but it isn't part of our plumbing code. It falls under
And
Title 17, water and wastewater is what it falls under.
And right now, no, we don't have the code in place to require that an existing home force the sump to be put in.
I don't believe they have pits and slab on grade.
Sure.
Or,
Slab
yeah,
on
makes
new
sense.
construction.
Right,
no
and,
pit.
and some of the walkouts, they will daylight it on, but typically, most of the new construction work we see, they have the piping there, they have the pits there, most of them are there. However, one of the things, the code's gonna require 1.5 inch pipe, and there are some plumbers that'll only run a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch pipe. So it does require 1.5 inch pipe, which isn't gonna make a whole lot of difference. It's mainly your labor that you have on the installation anyhow, so.
Two things. One, do you know when it became mandatory or that we changed it, that you couldn't go into the sanitary sewer? Was there a certain year that was changed?
I don't know. I think it's Title 1438 or something like that. I don't know what the date that became effective.
I think for people's benefit too, if you suddenly get this out in the public with this new, talk about this, that the older homes, I mean, it just was customary to go into the sanitary sewer. We want to change that, so we help on our water, wastewater system. So at least if they come up with an approximate year, so we don't unduly worry some citizens. If they did a major fix to.
John, I know that I've been working for the city for 28 years, and that's the way it was when I started. So I know it goes back farther than that, and
Yeah.
we could probably find out from wastewater when they put that in. But it's basically, I think it boils down to a federal guideline as the fact of treating clear water waste. You know, if you're using federal monies for your, wastewater treatment system, then you have to follow their guidelines too, so.
Okay. Second thing is, could you go back to the
Yeah,
prior
sorry about
slide? Since we're asking a few questions here. The second item, single fixture replacement. Over the year, and you use the garbage disposal, you get new dishwashers and so forth. I know there's a desire to make sure they're installed correctly, but if you're replacing or something, what's been the discussion that you all have had, especially with the contractors? Of course, you're dealing with licensed plumbers, but you get XYZ store that sells a dishwasher and they'll install it, or you get a garbage disposal and Roy goes home and just unscrews the old one and puts the new one in.
Well, my experience when I purchased and installed new appliances, I asked about that and they would not install it because they knew that it needed a licensed professional to do it, so they wouldn't. I guess the reason we have looked into this, and I think, John, you and I have had a conversation about this a couple of times, is that yes, there are, lots of folks out there who their dishwasher goes bad and they have just the one item, or their garbage disposal, or they're setting
Garbage disposal is a typical one. You can go pick one off the shelf.
setting a new toilet, that sort of thing. And a homeowner can do it. A homeowner can get a homeowner's
Yes.
permit to do it. But we get calls quite a bit from either realtors or from citizens looking to purchase a home in Lincoln. And I get the call asking about, can you tell me what's all been done to this house? And so part of the benefit we feel to still requiring permits for these is to maintain an accurate, checkable, public record on the maintenance that's been done to these houses, that sort of thing. And we thought there was a good balance between dropping the permit fee by significant amount and not requiring an inspection for every single permit. But we do have a concern about requiring that our, contractors continue to do quality work. And so that was the balance that we tried to come up with. We will look at doing basically try to get in as many inspections as that $15 per will allow us a year. We're thinking, at least we can get to 25% of those places, and we'll try and randomize how those are selected. And if we have a contractor that maybe has a questionable installation, maybe we hit that one more often. There's not an additional cost involved. It's still just the $15. But if there's a problem and we have to come back out, we can address that with that contractor to ensure that the citizens are getting quality work. So that's kind of the background for that.
Okay, so it's going to the
For that
random
proposal.
versus before, now it's just been 100%, hasn't it?
Pardon?
It's 100% inspection now
Yes.
versus you're going to this random.
Yes, and
that's-
part of that's manpower too. If we went to the personnel board and asked for the number of inspectors we needed to get to every single fixture replacement, we'd have a lot bigger staff than we do. It's just not practical to try and get to all of them. Is that a fair statement?
So
So
I'd like to see, do you have a lot more presentation to make?
we've got a few more items.
Let's do that and then hold questions until they're done, so we can make sure we get their whole presentation.
Okay, then moving on then to the fee changes that we have, the registration fees for master plumber. We've already got the master plumber contractor, which is actually the master plumber that's assigned as the contractor for that business they pay 250 years for their renewal. Just a straight master plumber, his, we're gonna propose to increase from $50 to $75 a year for his licensing. A journeyman plumber was 40 and proposing to go to $50 per year, and an apprentice plumber from $20 to $25. Also, the task force had thought that we needed to get continuing education for the journeyman plumbers as well as the masters. That's been required since we started the '09 code. So they're gonna require journeyman plumbers now to have 6 hours per year continuing education. And the master plumbers, that was 6, they're gonna increase to 10 hours of continuing education.
We've already kind of talked about these two. These were we talked about them in the fee section, so I don't know if we need to go into detail here, really.
And so I think that's just about all of the plumbing code notes, isn't it?
Yep. You're up, Steve.
Well, we also made some changes in our fees. We went up slightly on pieces of equipment. Electric furnaces, we raised from 30 to 35. Condensing units, which are air conditioners or remote heat pumps, $30 to $35. Gas furnaces, we raised to 40 because there's more involved with the inspections. We did add a new item, and that is new ductwork. Previously, on a new house, we would charge on our permit for a furnace and air conditioner and include the ductwork, not add separately. But the ductwork does require quite a bit of time for the inspections. We'll go out for our rough-in at least once to view the ductwork. We have to check sealing has become so critical, and insulation of it in certain areas. So we're spending quite a bit of time on the ductwork. And so what we did is added at $1 per system with a minimum of $20. So on a new home, our permit would raise $20. On a multiplex, if you were at, a 20-unit apartment house, we would still get $20 additional on the permit. And this would cover us going out and viewing that ductwork. That is about all the changes. We clarified remote condensing units on refrigeration to begin at greater than 5 ton. Board of Appeals, we raised from $100 to $250 if you were to appeal a decision or a test. Reason for that is because we end up with a lot of people involved for an appeal. We have to have the 5 members or a quorum of that on the board, and also the director, myself, an attorney. So we have quite a few people involved with that. The master contractor exam fee, we raised from $150 to $500. This is, we actually have to purchase our tests, but we also create a test, which is involving creating a print and building a lot of this. So our costs were just needed to be addressed. We'd been at that lower amount for a long time. And our registration went from $250 to $350 for that master. On those, we also added continuing education for our journeyman of 4 hours that we had not had previously. The other items, as I'd mentioned, and hopefully you've had a chance to look over some of this and would agree with my synopsis, that most of what we put in here is clarifications of things or making things more doable. For instance, replacing a hood in a commercial establishment. Some of the main codes in the International Mechanical Code have changed due to statistics and fire results. And we've found a way to adapt these existing situations and build a safety wall for them. So that's one measure we took to make that easier. Some of the items that we really wanted to bring to your attention, one of them is recirculating commercial cooking equipment. There are many proposals throughout the year of salesmen basically will get to the small restaurants, and there is an item that does not require a hood. We have visited some of these that our local code has never allowed them because we were always very concerned about them for fire reasons and the efficiencies of how well are they extracting grease. But due to the fact that the international code began to allow these, our task force made field trips to some of these that were actually in illegally, that people did not know, and they'd had them there for some time. We observed a lot of grease residue on the ceilings and walls around here. The one that we approached, we could smell it before we got to the second floor, which is where the restaurant was. So we did not wish to allow these. The task force voted unanimously to allow this. The city wrote a proposal due to the.
I'll jump in here a little bit. I don't want Steve to feel like he's burdening this. I asked staff to investigate a possible means of allowing these, if there was something that we felt would be safe. And what these items are those kind of self-contained fryer units. If you go into, some maybe smaller stores and they have like a single unit about this, and they have a deep fat fryer in it and kind of a small hood section above it, and it recirculates and filters out the grease and the goo that's not good for from fire safety and respiratory safety in there. And like Steve had said, during the course of the task force, they visited a number of shops that wanting to look at these and give them another fresh chance of, maybe this is an item that we can allow smaller stores to purchase because they're a lot less expensive than the big commercial hoods that are required. And without fail, each one there was grease everywhere, and they would hear from the employees some complaints about the breathing conditions. And so the task force was just they could not bring themselves to approve these. So fast forward a little bit, I get another personal couple of requests for these things. So I asked Steve, and Steve was not real supportive of it, but he obliged me, come up with some verbiage that under some circumstances that we may be able to approve these. And so he did. We presented that to the Code Study Committee, and Tom was on, like I said, on the Mechanical Task Force, and he's on the Code Study Committee. We presented all of this, and the Code Study Committee was again not comfortable with approving these from a safety standpoint. And so the net result is no change to what was originally proposed, but it's in the minutes, and it was part of the public record, and we get requests for these a couple times a month. And so I would not be surprised if you folks would end up getting a request to, or at least questions about it. So that's why we kind of wanted to present that to you here today, so that you at least have a little bit of knowledge about that.
We did take my writing, and we came up with some ideas that may be helpful with it, with multiple inspections on them. But we did take this to the Code Study also, and they also were not comfortable with it after hearing some of the testimony of what we had seen. And so, yes, your constituents are very likely, at some point, one of you or more of you may get this request, why can't we have these? They're UL listed. We think that when they're brand new, they're probably not too bad. They get a little age to them, and they just simply do not extract the grease and just become an unsafe item.
Last one.
Last one is in the residential code, we have brought, again, a request for a seal combustion furnace. Now, we had brought this up on the previous code, but that was for all furnaces, whether new or replacing them. Our proposal this time is to add to the residential code. We say in newly built residences, all natural gas or propane burning furnaces shall be 90% minimum efficiency rated and seal combustion, exception residential garage, outbuildings, or pool heating equipment. What we found out in the 1990 is that our homes were getting so tight that infiltration was not keeping up with the combustion process. So as these pieces of equipment were burning fuel, they were getting the home into a negative situation, which was causing conventional furnaces, the flues, to backdraft. And we knew that because of a spill switch that was in that era of furnaces. They would trip out on a cold night. So we began to bring in some infiltration air simply to keep up with this. The other reason we have brought this forward is the safeties on our 80%, they do have safeties in there on a more conventional furnace, the lower efficiency furnaces, but they are almost always vented together with a water heater. Now, the water heater has an open diverter in it, so the furnace will not sense a problem because the flue gases will simply drift back out of the opening in that water heater flue and not notify the furnace of the problem, of the venting problem. If you recall here, recently we had the problem, we gave the public service announcement, when these roofs were being re-roofed, some people were putting new caps on and were not installing them properly. The furnace safeties could not discern that. So the flue gases were coming back into the home. So our hope is that if we were to be able to go to these other systems, well, that will be eliminated because the seal combustion 90% furnaces use a completely different venting systems that is not sharing that passage with a water heater, and the safeties will shut that furnace down were it to become blocked for some reason.
Any questions? Cindy?
Thank you. I want to go back just for a minute to the installation of ductwork. And so my question was, I know that you had a fee added to that, but that's something you're already doing, is inspecting that. That's not going to
Yes.
require additional personnel or anything?
No, we have been inspecting that. But we've found that we're spending more time because now our codes are demanding every joint be sealed. And we're having a higher R value rating applied to attic ductwork. And so our inspectors are spending more time checking the ceiling.
Indirectly, it could lead to needing additional inspectors sooner because of the, increased time spent at each of these inspections, but we're not proposing new people right away.
Okay. Lyrian, and then John?
Just a question about the fees and the increases. Percentages can be deceiving, $5 over 35, a fee that's going from 30 to 35 is like a 17% increase, which sounds like a lot, but on the face value is not nearly so much as some of these other fees that are increasing from 150 to 500. Have there been fee increases recently? Are you trying to make up lost ground? And what's your plan for the future to try and keep things to sort of incremental amounts that are more easily absorbed?
The answer your question about the larger, the 150 to 500 or whatever that was, I believe that was an item that was skipped the last time, and it sounds, making up ground doesn't sound quite right, but those are the registration fees and the boards of appeal fees that jump the farthest. And I think, if memory serves, going back to some of the discussion, some of the appeals that we were getting, and whether this is fair or not, they were very, it was not difficult to lodge an appeal, and so people were just kind of doing it for a lot of things. And the board, I believed, or the task force believed that these appeals needed to be for very important reasons. And so part of it was not necessarily to make sure somebody really wanted to go through the appeal process, because there is a lot of time and effort spent by our volunteers with those processes and with staff. And we wanted to try and get to a balance, and I don't think that's the one that went up to, I
That
can't
one went
remember
100 to
what
250.
they were, yeah.
Yeah.
So to get that to there. Now, the registration fees, those hadn't been, none of those in the mechanical side had been addressed for at least one code cycle or two. And so, it was kind of being, the group looked to bring it back to, or make up ground a little bit, just kind of like how you said. Now, how we measure exactly how much time it takes to support those activities, you know, we don't have that down to an exact. Some are longer than others. The exam fees are pretty concrete, because we know how much we have to pay ICC to provide the tests and grade the tests. So that has a lot more concrete
So you're aligning
basis.
the exam fee with real costs to the
As
department?
best we can, yeah.
But then going forward, will you have to, do you expect that those fees will continue, those fees you have to pay will continue to go up? Or how can you look to not have to play catch up in the future?
Well, I think part of that is splitting off, you might not have been in here for that first part. We are, no, that's okay. We are splitting the, maybe you were, I can't remember, but we split the fees out of the ordinances and we're adopting them through resolution. So any of those fees can be addressed separately from codes themselves. And so that was kind of something we came up with. Chris Conley's our contact for the law department, and he thought that was a very good way of kind of separating those two activities. So we can look at fees more frequently and maybe smaller increase or smaller adjustments on a more frequent basis, rather than big jumps when we wait for however many years in between code adoptions. Sorry,
But the people in the task force, the people who are in this industry who would be subject to some of these fees, were agreeing that this was,
they set the
Good thing to
levels.
do.
They help,
Yes.
they help set the levels.
All right, got about 2 minutes. John?
Okay, real quick, a couple things. There were some differences between the mechanical and the plumbing codes. I noticed the CPE, or the professional education, what have you, I believe it was 4 hours for journeyman in the mechanical, 6 in the plumbing. Any particular reason?
That's just what the members of our
That's what-
task force
Yes.
Okay.
deem necessary. That's-
Okay. And then it appeared on the plumbing, the appeals board went from 250 to 500 versus mechanical went from like 100 to 150 or something,
100 to
150
250.
100.
to 250. And again, there's a difference there. I just wondered why they weren't the
And
same.
again, that was the numbers that the task force came up with. I mean, that.
They're two separate task forces that
Okay.
had their own
Nope,
thoughts.
that's fine.
Okay.
Now, the other thing, the last question, real quick, is have you ever considered, rather than making the entry to an appeals expensive, to say if your appeal is denied, you're assessed another $500 or something? So the whole idea is to keep spurious appeals not there, and it's
One
kind of.
reason we probably never thought of that, it's not a bad idea, but we almost never have an appeal that is approved. And that's one of the reasons, as Chad was mentioning, it was such an easy threshold to pay this amount and just roll the dice.
Get it
We
up
were
front.
getting a lot of people who would fail our tests to become a mechanical
Yeah.
contractor.
The majority of the appeals was to, like Steve said, appeal the test, and it's a right or wrong. And so
Okay.
we're spending a ton of time.
Just think about in the future if it comes, but I understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll take a couple-minute break before we begin the directors and organizational meeting.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks much.